You're listening to the Vent Podcast, where we bring you interviews and stories from around the world of wine and spirits. From winemakers and critics to sommeliers and master distillers, we'll explore the people and businesses who are instrumental in shaping the future of today's food and drinks culture. Enjoy the show. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Vent Podcast. My name is Brady. I'm joined by Billy Galenko. How was your weekend, Billy?
It was good. We did a little bit of wine tasting, actually, and I did some wine buying. I haven't really, and not fancy wine buying, but I haven't bought wine in a while. But I went to this place. Me had requested an orange wine. It's called Silver Lake Wines. It's around the corner, but they have both like kind of traditional historic wine regions as well as like some natural stuff. But for some reason, I ended up on a kick for sparkling red. So I ended up coming home with like a Frizzante sparkling Barbera, which should be interesting, and a Lambrusco di Sobrara, which is like if you've ever had one of those, it's like the super lean, like if you were to pour it in a glass, it's almost like pink, like light style. They're very nice, but those are a couple finds that I had that were nice.
That Lambrusco, throw a little roasted veggie on the grill. Do you have a grill?
I do.
You do?
I do. But that, especially the Sobrara. I think that could be pretty interesting now that you mention it. What about you? Have you tasted anything this week?
Yeah, this weekend I actually, what was it, this weekend or Monday? Every now and then I'll drive up kind of the main road outside my house and just go to every liquor store looking for whiskey that they might have, like someone passed over. And on like the very last store, I went to like 7. And at the very last store, there were all these bourbons behind the cash register. And they basically had nothing interesting on the shelves. It was all like bottom shelf stuff, and their wine offering was, Franzia, and I don't even know if they had bottled wine. It was all like box stuff. But that's usually good for getting highly allocated whiskeys from distributors. So I looked behind the counter and there were all these bourbons up there. There was like Weller, there was a Blanton's and Eagle Rare, like some kind of common things. And the prices were all like 3 and 4 times MSRP. Mm-hmm. But then there was a bottle of Little Book Chapter 6, and it was only like $30 above MSRP. And typically you can't really find a bottle, secondary for under $200. So I think MSRP is like $125. I paid $159 with tax and everything. So yeah, I picked a bottle of that up. That was an interesting acquisition.
Nice. That's fun. I feel like there's a bunch of bourbons that I need to learn more about, because there's a few places like that here in LA. Like I'll go up to the counter, I'm like, you have a lot back there, and I think some of it looks better than I would assume.
Yeah, it's hard because especially a lot of the Buffalo Trace products. So Buffalo Trace, Blanton's, Eagle Rare, the Weller line, all of that. MSRP is really, really low on those. Like most of those bottles are all under $80. But then MSRP can easily be $100 to $500 depending, as you get into the Wellers. So usually they only get one and they mark it up a ton. It's kind of annoying, but it was just funny because all of the ones that they had behind there that were really marked up were far less interesting than the Little Book, and like less rare too, but that had the best price. But
they probably didn't even know what it was.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So but yeah, I'm probably not going to drink it. I might trade it, I think. It's interesting. It's made up of basically it's mainly 4-year-old whiskeys. But it's more exclusive and more expensive than the normal Bookers, which I don't know how long it's aged, but it's more than 4 years. I think it might be like 8 or something like that. So it's kind of weird. It's weird that they're offering a whiskey at such a high MSRP that has such young whiskeys in it. So you would think they'd be older at that price point.
But it's blended. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Switching gears a little bit to the wine side of things. Have you ever heard of? And I have a new wine glass. I guess I'm bringing this up for the listeners. A new wine glass that I want because I used to be a Gabriel Glass fan. I still am, I guess. I own the glasses. I don't really use them really anymore, which is interesting. Because I just got to take them out. And anyway, but now I have a new glass that will replace those in theory. It's called Glass Van, like GLASVIN, all one word. A friend of the program, Raj Parr, I was on his Instagram, or maybe it was because I was on his that I was served this. But it's him tasting, and they basically have like a Raj glass.
Yeah,
it's, like,
I saw that.
Done in conjunction with him. But I was like, maybe this is the hot new like Som glass to have. And then I have a buddy who he's like, it's hard to explain. He's a sommelier in New York at really nice restaurants, and he gets to drink amazing wine all the time. But he's always kind of like the bad boy. He was always in trouble in like high school. He's into like punk music. He does like intense competitive paintballing now, I guess. I don't know. But then he also just drinks like really nice wine. So I looked at his Instagram, and after paintballing, he goes home and had this like a glass van with like 1982 Napa Chardonnay. And he's just like, check it out. I was like, oh, what a weird juxtaposition for his life. But also I was like, he's using glass van, so it must be cool.
Nice. Yeah, those Raj glasses are really neat. They have really bulbous bowls and really short stems. It almost makes me think of like a beer glass.
Like a snifter?
Yeah, or no, yeah, like a snifter a little bit, but I feel like beer glasses are shaped like that too, aren't they? Not as bulbous, but like with the short kind of stumpy stem.
I hate the stumpy stem. We have some glasses like that I don't like. They're red wine glasses. They're Riedel, and they have gimpy stems. And I don't know. I mean, that looks cool. It looks like basically it's like a giant. Yeah, that makes sense though. That's interesting. Either way, their baseline though, multi-purpose. Every wine glass looks actually pretty cool. So I might have to invest. So we'll see.
Well, I'm sure our guest today that we have on the podcast, if we had known about these glasses when we were recording with him, would have comments. Because Jay Hack, who is our guest today for our interview, has been around the wine world for, I guess, collecting and drinking for, what do you say, I guess 35, 40 years? Probably, based on what he was.
Like that.
Yeah, so Jay was actually, I came across Jay several years ago because he was mentioned in the Wall Street Journal. He's a big Jets fan, and the Wall Street Journal did a article on how he brings really expensive wines, especially from California, to Jets tailgates and drinks them. It's kind of, a tradition that they've had for a while. And then I was invited to a tasting in New York that Jay put on, and so through that, kind of, we got him to come on the podcast. Jay is an attorney by trade, but I think if he could have committed his life and career to wine collecting and drinking, he would have done that. He has a pretty extensive collection of California wines. I think extensive drinker of Rhone varieties from California, as well as Napa Cabernet and other things like that. So we had Jay on just to talk about wine, talk about collecting, talk about things he's interested in.
Yeah, I mean, he also talked about some European wines. He basically defined it as he likes any well-made wine that had thought and care into it. He obviously has his own adamant perspective on what a good wine is, and everybody will get a taste of that because he's such a character. But what I loved about him, he's like the consummate wine fan. Is like he loves what he loves, and he wants to share it with like everybody. He wants, he doesn't want to just sit home and hoard it. He does not really buying to sell. So I love that. You see that regularly across all of the wine industries. People just want to share with other people, and I think he kind of epitomized that.
For sure. Yeah, he's super well known on some of the online wine discussion boards like Wine Berserkers and stuff like that. So yeah, he's a great figure in wine collecting, and especially even just like the New York collectors and tasters scene. So we're excited to have on today Jay Hack. Hey Jay, thanks so much for joining us today. Glad to have you on.
Oh, sure. Sounds like fun. Ugh, look at all the clutter behind me. Don't worry about it. Those trophies are my kids. They're not mine.
I thought they were for wine tasting trophies that you won.
No, no, no. They're for chess tournaments.
Oh wow, nice.
You have to understand that as a sidelight, I discover world-class chess players. I actually have a 4-win and 3-loss record against the second highest rated chess player in the world. He was down to number 11, but he's back up to number 2. And I have a 4-win and 3-loss record against him. We won't discuss how old he was when I got the 4 wins.
Well, you can never play him again because you got to keep that winning record.
Oh, that is precise. Believe me, he knows. No. I beat him 4 times. He was then became a grandmaster, and and I can tell you exactly the day we played 3 more games. It was the day of the famous Janet Jackson Super Bowl Justin Timberlake thing, just because I was at a Super Bowl party and he was there, and I played him 3 more times. Needless to say, did not win. And when it got to the 4th game, I stood up and walked away rather than play, and he got moderately annoyed. And he knows. I mean, I know the kid. He's not a kid anymore. He's got to be 33 years old. And he, every time I see him, he goes, shame, shame, shame. And I said, 4-3, 4-3.
Yeah, he started practicing after you beat him. That's in you can.
No, he was he was 6.
Oh, yeah.
Oh no, it's a whole long story we don't need to tell, but I did discover him in quotes, and he admits he was on Craig Kilborn once, and he told the story. I didn't know that he actually admitted that it was true, but it's true.
Huh.
His older brother, and my son are very close friends.
Mm.
Oh. Well,
But we want to talk about wine, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to tell our listeners that we met each other recently at a tasting that you put together up in New York, and within the first 15 minutes of us meeting, I think I dumped a quarter of a bottle of Grenache on your feet. Do you remember that?
No.
Oh.
I don't remember anything about that. All I remember is 18 bottles of Sine Qua Non. And or as I understand, they pronounce it locally, Sine Qua Non.
Ah.
It's for those who don't know what it is, that's the wine that you have to wait 10 years on a waiting list just to get on a mailing list to be allowed to buy, and B, when 2 hedge fund guys with more money than brains got involved in an auction bidding war for the 1 bottle ever made of that wine that they did not own, and they both didn't own the same bottle. It got to $42,000, as I recall, before one of them said, "Oh, this is stupid," and dropped out, and the other one got it for $42,000. Now, I have had that exact wine. I had it years earlier, and to tell you the truth, it's not. I didn't like it. It's the only wine from that producer that I did not like.
Oh wow!
Which one was that?
It was a rosé. I think it was called Stars and Stripes, and I actually tossed it. It was terrible. I didn't like it. I'm not a rosé fan, and there was nothing to it.
Wow. Well, let's use that as a way to take a step back and tell our folks how you kind of got into. When did you start buying and calling yourself a collector? And what's that?
How'd you get into wine?
Oh, exactly. When did I start? I've never called myself no. Okay. When did I start calling myself a collector? I don't know. There's no clear dividing line. I used I used to buy wine from roughly when I was buying serious wine while I was in law school. And then from then until just after my first son was born, we had a collection. We considered it a major collection. It had 100 bottles, 150 bottles, and that was like more wine than we would drink for the rest of our lives. And then you get children and you got other things to do and you got other things to spend your money on. So which was unfortunate timing because it meant that I missed things like 1982 Bordeaux because my first son was born in 79. For roughly from then until about the mid to late 90s, you bought for current consumption. You had a couple of bottles that you knew weren't going to be good for a decade, so you threw them in the bottom of the rack. But other things got in the way until I'm not sure exactly when, but roughly 1996 or 97. When my younger son was 10 years old, we went out to California for my cousin's wedding. He was married in Calistoga, which is the county seat of Napa County. And we went out there and we had entirely unplanned and accidental a wine week. Why? Well, we fly to California, we fly to San Francisco, and my son had this friend. The friend was somebody he had met at a gifted kids program, and the kid he had no friend. It was weird. He had no friends because he was too smart. And my son, who was, I think, a year old, the kid was a year older than him, had been at the same program and was his friend. So his mother begged us to bring my son over so that they could, spend time together. And when we got there, she begged us to please just leave my son there so that they could play for 5 hours and my wife and I could have some time to ourselves. And they lived in this house. There's a hill in San Francisco with these houses that cost like $1 gazillion, and they lived there and they looked pretty respectable. So we left my son there, and we had nothing to do for 5 hours. And we look in the newspaper, and was an organization called Cal-Ital, Cal-Ital, which was a trade association. And they were having a show, and it was for the trade only. And I said to my wife, "Hey, let's go there." She says, "But it's for the trade only." I said, "Look, my father was a salesman. I grew up with him sneaking me into toy shows all around the country. Kids loved me when I'd come back with these toys that nobody else owned." I said, "I'll get in." And we go somewhere on some pier, I don't even remember where it was, and I talk my way in, and there's all these wine professionals, and we got these glasses that said Cal-Ital wines. I still have the glasses, 2 glasses, and we walked around, and it was great. For 4 hours, all you got to do was eat and drink and talk to these people who really knew their stuff. And we had tremendous fun. And then all these things happened in an intervening week. Because my cousin was getting married in Calistoga, and his best man was happened to be the sommelier and maitre d' at a place called Il Trevina. It's a famous restaurant in Napa, and I discovered that you could drive around in Napa and just go into wineries and they give you wine for free. They don't do that anymore because it got to be a racket. I understand that there are too many, bachelorette parties where they rent a limo and they go over there. But in whenever it was about 96, you could drive around and they'd give you wine for free and you could taste it. And then the on the Silverado Trail, which is the road going up and down Napa, the traffic was pretty bad, so you couldn't really hurt yourself, even though if you had too much to drink. Although, being older and wiser these days, I don't think I would have done it quite that way. And then I discovered this was great, man. You could bring in the pre 9/11 days, you could bring. Everybody got a suitcase. You was allowed 2 suitcases. And I was traveling back with me, my wife, my son, my other son, and my mother, which means that if we pack correctly, we could bring back 7 cases of wine. And you could go to any one of these places, and for $10, they'd sell you a styro case. So while everybody else was doing my wife was getting ready for the go to the wedding. She was getting ready to go to the rehearsal dinner, all of this stuff. I would just get in the car, drive down the street, pick a place, go in, taste stuff. If I liked it, I'd buy it. If I didn't, and we had 7 cases of wine. There was only one problem. We also had 5 people in the car. You cannot put 5 suitcases, 7 cases of wine, and 5 people in one car. But it's a solvable problem. You get a bigger car. And we came back with 7 cases of wine, and we were off. And that was really when the insanity of collecting started. I can remember where we went to a number of places. It was great. And to this day, I still will gladly pay top dollar for the analogous experience, which I used to do at Zacky's every Saturday, which is a well-known wine shop in Westchester County. It's a couple miles from my house, actually. And that is, you could sit and talk to a winemaker or a winery owner about whatever you wanted, and they were always incredibly open about their techniques. Nobody's got any real trade secrets about how they make their wine. It's if you compare it to, let's say, a lot of other businesses where everything is a trade secret. And I'm a lawyer. I write confidentiality and secrecy agreements all the time. Winemakers are completely different. And I've talked to the intervening 25 years or so, I've talked to a lot of them, including virtually all of the most famous ones, winemakers, winery owners, wine writers, and they're all incredibly open. And I can still remember walking into St. Clement Winery. I haven't talked to the guy since. If he watches your blog, if he's still alive, he'll remember, oh, he's that wacko. I walked in. This was a true revelation. I walked into St. Clement Winery, and there was somebody else there, and he takes out a bottle of their Cabernet, and he ceremonially he sort of decanted it, and being the obnoxious New York know-it-all, I made a comment about how, you don't really need to decant it. It's too young. There's no sediment in it. And he finished with this woman, and then he says, okay, big mouth. I don't remember what he really said. He says, now I'm going to prove to you why it was so important. And I said, okay, what do we do? And he took out 2 bottles from the same case, which was under the table, and he opened them, and he said, turn around and don't turn back until I tell you to. Whoops, hold on. Somebody must be selling me a car warranty. I turned around. He poured one violently into a pitcher, just a regular glass pitcher, and then he poured that into a glass. And the other one he carefully poured just from the bottle into the glass. He told me this later. I didn't see it. And he says, okay, turn around. And he says, drink the wine, and I drank from both. I said, "Oh, bullshit, you cheated. It's not the same wine." And he swore that it was, and that he had just massively aerated one, and he had carefully poured the other one, and it had no oxygen in it. And that was a revelation to me. And I've had conversations about screw caps with excuse me. I've had conversations about screw caps with Darry Osborne, who I believe has passed away, who was the head winemaker at Darrenberg in Australia, and they've been using screw caps for decades in Australia. I don't think they sell their wine in the United States with screw caps, although they may have recently started doing that because it was because of market acceptance. But he said screw caps are better, and he said I've had screw cap. We put away screw cap bottles of our wine from 15 years ago and compared it with a cork sealed wines. And I said, well, what's the difference? And he says the screw cap wine tastes fresh, and yeah, it doesn't have the aging characteristics, but it's fresh and bright and in perfect condition. I've had discussions with what's his name? I'll think of it in a moment. Oh, Alois Crocker, who at Zacky's was in Scarsdale. It's now in Portchester. They recently moved. Alois Crocker, and we talked about 2001 Echem, and he gave me some very important business advice, which I did not follow, which was I had just had a bottle of his TBA, Trockenbeer and Auschwitz, very sweet wine, along with a bottle of a 2001 Sudero, which is a Sauterne, a sweet wine. And I said, your wine was really fantastic. I said, I thought I wasn't embarrassed by the Sudero, which is a world-class Sauterne. I said, maybe the Sudero was a tiny bit better from the greatest vintage in the history of Sauterne. And then I looked at him and I said, but I haven't had the 2001 Echem, which is the benchmark. And I could see his eyes lit up like this. And he started smiling. And I said, you have? And he said, yes. I said, what do you think? And he gave me some advice that I did not follow. The advice was sell. This is not some schnook. This is a guy who makes world-class sweet wines. He makes, by the way, he was part of the joint venture that generated Mr. K from Sine Qua Non. He says to me, sell everything you own and buy 2001 Echem, which unfortunately it was expensive and I wasn't flush with cash at the time, so I didn't listen to him. But if I had, we'd be talking from Tahiti.
It sounds like, I was under the impression that you mainly drank domestic wines, but is your cellar pretty much split between the wines in maybe France and Germany and Spain and in the U.S., or what does your current collection look like?
It's mostly domestic California wines. Mm-hmm. I would say, I'm looking it up right now as we chat. Did you lose me or can you still see me?
Yeah, you're good. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I wasn't sure. I would say that it is mostly domestic, but when people ask me what kind of wine do you like, my response is anything. What's your favorite? Whatever. My response is always some variation on anything made with grapes that is well made by somebody who knows what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Except if it's called Retsina, which is a Greek wine that tastes like turpentine and is in fact has a pine
Pine tar.
sap, pine tar. I'm not sure exactly how it's made, but it's disgusting. My current collection is 72.4% United States, 14.6% France, 6.4 Italy, 2% Australia, 1.4 Portugal, 1.4 Spain, 1% Germany, and assorted other places. You can find good wine made almost anywhere. There are a couple of grapes that I didn't say I won't. There are a couple of grapes that I don't own any of because I've never found one that I liked, but I'm not assuming, it's not that I'm never trying it again because there'll never be one that I like. I just haven't found one yet. There is a huge divide between, let's call them Francophiles or Europhobes, who would never drink anything from California because the ABV is too high and it's a fruit bomb and it's got, which is a fancy way of saying it's got too much flavor and they can't handle it. And I'm, come on, you know the same people that I do. They can't. Alf, who I won't give his full name, but who's a lawyer in Florida, he doesn't like flavor. He likes to wear a tutu when he drinks his wine. Or Brad, the bird photographer from New York, puts on a tutu before he drinks his Loire Cab Franc. Just kidding. But you can publish it that way because they know who they are. But no, I feel sorry for them, and I really do. I say it jokingly, but I mean it. They only appreciate and enjoy they have a very narrow parochial palate. I am.
So these California wines, I think you drew a distinction that's pretty common. You talked about the quote unquote fruit forward or fruit bomby nature of the wines and the high alcohol. What draws you to that style, and how would you describe the style versus the way that we kind of just caricatured it?
Well, what draws me to it, the fact that it has flavor, it is forceful, it is worth drinking. It will stand up to steak or smoked brisket or for that matter, California whites. We drank Chardonnay, a high-end California Chardonnay on Sunday with assorted fish and seafood, and it was a great pairing. Do I like a really good Chablis with shrimp mussels and scallops, which was the core of what we ate on Sunday? The answer is yes. But we had a superb California Chardonnay that mimicked it. I believe that to some extent, the California wines are inherently botanically better. Why? Because they reach phenolic ripeness. They get, I believe that generates the best flavor. Other people disagree with me, but if I've been collecting and drinking, for example, Gruau de la Rose, a second growth left bank Bordeaux, since the 1975 vintage. I was actually given a case of it as a bonus by the firm that I was working for because we had to do legal work on New Year's Eve, and my wife and I missed a party because of it, and so they gave me a case of wine um, in exchange, and it has characteristic flavors. But those characteristic flavors are described as sweet, saddle leather and earthiness and this and that. In a good bottle, they're very nice. In a bad bottle, it tastes like you're licking the dirt off of a corral floor. It's the Aegean stables. Um, I believe that there is more of that coming out of European wines caused by the problems of um, uh, climate problems. Um, not, I'm not talking about climate change. I'm just talking about fewer days of sun and a little colder weather. Um, you've got, Bordeaux, for those who haven't looked at a map, is on the west coast of France. That spot that sort of goes like this, and Bordeaux is in here. And when the United States being over on this side, and with prevailing winds, it's cooler there than it is on most days, most years, not always. It is cooler there than in the United States. And as a result, the grapes don't get as ripe. And I think ripe grapes have better flavor. There's also they're better at lying in Europe than in the United States. And particularly to the tax collector. And, my, as a Chinese client once said to me when I had spent all this time working with tax treaties to solve an issue regarding movie theaters and movie production, and he changed it at the last minute. I said, "Why did you do this?" And he said, "Let me tell you something." He said, "My ancestors were cheating the tax collector while your ancestors were still rubbing two sticks together to make fire." And I had a winery owner from Piedmont, who I will not name because he might get into trouble, tell me that they just lie about the alcohol percentage in their wines. I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because there's a tax differential in the United States between 14% or less, or 15.5 and above. It's the tax is higher." I said, "It's 25 cents a bottle. Why do you care?"
Yeah.
For 25 cents a bottle, why are you lying to the United States government? He says, "It's a matter of principle. We don't pay taxes." And so the alcohol speech is mainly BS. As a matter of fact, I drank, I can't remember what it was, but I know what it was. It was a week ago. It was a cheap bottle of Portuguese wine that had been given to us as a gift and had been sitting in our cellar for 10 years. On the label, it said ABV 12.5-14.
Yeah.
But he was lying. And how do I know he was lying? Because there was an importer label slapped on top by a U.S. importer that said ABV 15.2.
Oh, wow.
Because the U.S. guy didn't care for the 25 cents. He wasn't going to lie to the Customs Bureau. So a lot of it is phony, but I like them because they have flavor. And you want to know something? With the exception of I don't know what experienced amateur tasters. Here's my prop. If I take this bottle, which is a 2019 California Grenache, most recent release, I think, of Sinquanon, and I pour it into a glass, and I pour a comparably priced Southern Rhone or northern Spain, where they make a lot of Grenache wine, into a glass next to it, and give it to an amateur taster who doesn't have an axe to grind, they will like the sine qua non better. They will like the riper wine better. And people will say to me, the hoity-toity fancy people will say to me, oh, that's because they don't know how to appreciate the true genius of the European wines. And my response, depending upon whether I like the person I'm responding to, is usually some variation on, yeah, and they don't like rotted fish heads either. But in Vietnam, when it's all they had, they developed a taste for rotted fish head soup.
So when you're thinking about other countries, are you typically looking for that same kind of like ripeness? Like when you look in Spain, are you looking for really big wines as opposed to like earthier Riojas, or same in Australia?
No, as I said, I'm looking for well-made wines that taste good.
So
They don't all. I would say in Australia, which has an even warmer climate, it's probably a lot of very good warm climate, high alcohol wines. But that's true in California.
yeah.
If I'm going to be drinking wine from the Finger Lakes in northern New York, it's going to be Riesling, and it's going to have low alcohol, because there's a reason why they grow Riesling on the slopes of the hills around the Finger Lakes, because it works well there. Not everything works the same. I would say Riesling is the one that I really don't like ripe. I have had California Rieslings. I have had them. I had about 15 years ago, we did a blind tasting of Rieslings, 3 bottles, one from Germany, one from California, and one from the Finger Lakes. And there were about 8 people who participated. They were all relatives of mine, but they were all people who were regular, experienced amateurs. And everybody ranked the California Riesling last. And I felt the same way. Some of them liked the Finger Lakes Riesling a little better. Some of them liked the German Riesling a little better. Nobody liked the California Riesling, because it is a grape that, in my opinion, does not work well extremely ripe. It's the sweetness is out of balance with the acidity. It doesn't have any brightness. It doesn't just taste like honey. It just sort of feels bad. It was not good. Everybody agreed, but generally, I suppose it's interesting. Pinot Noir is an interesting example, although I have, a lot of my Francophile Bergheads love Burgundy and cannot stand California Pinot Noir. They think it's awful. And, I have some, even for California, high alcohol, very ripe California Pinot Noirs that are, in my view, very well made, good wines, but they don't taste like I could say they don't taste like Pinot Noir, but that's BS. They are. The Pinot Noir tastes like what it tastes, whatever it is. It doesn't taste like Pinot Noir from Burgundy. which is generally unripe swill. No, it's not unripe swill, but remember the word for adding sugar to wine because it doesn't have enough sugar to make enough alcohol is chaptalisation, a French word named after a guy named Chaptal who invented the technique because if he didn't add sugar to Pinot Noir grapes in Burgundy, he couldn't get enough alcohol. And I don't know whether it's still true, but for many years, the French wine, whatever you call the governmental authority, referred to euphemistically as the French wine fascists or the French wine Nazis. You can only add sugar in years that they said it was okay. Remember, those are the same people who said they lied to the government about percentage alcohol. I have been at wineries, I won't mention which one, in Italy, where they were adding stuff, a well-known winery, where they were adding stuff to the must. We were there during crush. They brought the grapes in early in the morning. There are reasons why they pick at night. I guess it creates less stress and problems. And they threw it into the crushing machine. And then the guy who worked there, who was, whatever, a migrant worker from Turkey or something, like something like that, throws this brown powder in. And I say, because that was part of his job. And I said, no, what's that? Is it, I guessed that I was wrong. He goes, no, it's acid. It's illegal. They're not allowed to do that, but they all do it because you add a little bit of, it's like, you're cooking something and you add a little vinegar. It makes it taste better. Well, this whatever it was a brown, I think it was a brown powder, and he made better wine. And,
So what are some?
So I'm not so Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So what are? I'm just curious. I actually worked a harvest in Australia and spent some time. So I'm just kind of curious. Like you mentioned, Ehrenberg. What producers do you like there and elsewhere? I'm just curious to see who you consider is to be the high quality guys.
I like Clarendon Hills. They make a lot of different things, and their wines are definitely out of fashion these days, and are actually, you can get them at auction for a third the price of what I paid 15 years ago. I will occasionally buy them at auction. My wife just bought. This is a bad thing. Teaching your wife how to buy wine at auction is a mistake. Shh, don't say anything. Don't do it though. She just bought 2 cases of Two Hands Shiraz from Australia. It's great wine. I'm very happy she bought it. But she got an offer somehow. I don't know how they found her, but she got an offer based upon something at auction, and she goes, oh wow, I could like push a couple of buttons and go to the auction and put in a bid, and then I could put in your credit card number. So Two Hands me. There are a couple of classics in Australia. You've got Grange, which I have a couple bottles of. I haven't had I've had maybe 4 bottles in my entire life, so it's difficult. But it's a wine that you got to wait 25 years before you drink it. That's very good. What is the most transcendent wine I've ever had out of Australia? Henschke's Hill of Grace, which is I've only had 2 or 3 times. I don't own any. I wish I had bought it the first time I had it when it was really expensive at $125 a bottle. It is now really expensive. I just looked at about $650 a bottle. It is astoundingly good. I mean, is it the perfect wine? No, but I'd like to meet the winemaker, and I want to put about 6 guys in a room. The guy at Henschke's who makes Hill of Grace, the guy at Rias who makes Rias, and a couple of others. Put them all in a room and let them figure out how the hell what they all do that makes wine so good. But I also have. I used to think it was the largest collection in the United States, but apparently someone has challenged me out of California. There's a winery in Australia called Wendouree. Have you ever had Wendouree? Most people have never even heard of it. It's I had a friend who was on. I was laying in a hospital bed, having had my gallbladder removed about 12 years ago, and I had a friend who worked for a hospital equipment manufacturer or supplier. She was a saleswoman, and the machine that she had was that she sold was hooked up to me, and it kept jamming during the night, and the alarm would go off and it would wake me up and I couldn't sleep. So I sent her an email that said, where are you? Your I can't remember what the machine, it was an IV pump. It stinks. And she said, I am in Australia on a company junket for their best salespeople in the entire world, which she was. She was the best drug dealer in the state of, she sold more drugs in the state of New York than anybody else, legal or illegal. Why? Because she sold cancer drugs to Sloan Kettering. But she was with, I said, is the president of the company with you? She said, absolutely. I said, tell him if he doesn't fix this expletives deleted machine, I'm going to rip his heart out. And she said, so what wines should I buy in Australia? And I posted on a wine discussion bulletin board and got back the idea that if she can find Wendouree to bring it back. So she said, so I told her that, and she couldn't find it. So I made it my mission in life to buy Wendouree. And when we couldn't find any in the United States, we assembled a packet representing all of the bottles of Wendouree for sale in all of Europe. And we combined them in London and shipped them to the United States. I got 29 bottles and split them up with some friends. It is special.
Yeah, I just looked it up. You don't see much Shiraz from Clare Valley, straight there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's when I bought it, which was when Britain. You see, you have to tie this to reality. I bought it when they voted the day of the Brexit vote in England, because I made a bet. I had to buy British pounds to pay the shipper in London, and I made a bet on the vote and what it was going to do to the value of the British pound, and I won the bet, and it saved me 15%. But so that's when we bought it. But in those days, it was $60 to $90 a bottle. It is now like, I bought a couple more, but I think 6 or 8 more bottles that I was able to get that were brought in by somebody directly. It's like $300-400 a bottle. Because now because stupid people like me wrote up articles about it and told everybody else how good it was.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's probably happened a lot to wines that you used to purchase back in the late 80s, 90s. Now, I mean, especially in California, right? What were you buying some of that cult stuff for that first trip you went out?
Not a lot. I will guarantee you that I didn't pay more than 30 or 40.
Yeah.
If I paid $40, it was a big deal. I remember being offered, you'll appreciate this, I don't know, it depends upon who's listening. I remember being offered 3 bottles of 1990 La Tâche, a French Burgundy, front, a top of the line. I think it'd be fair to say top of the line French Burgundy, by my partner who had just gotten the opportunity to buy a 6-bottle banded case. They had steel bands around the cases. For my recollection was $75 a bottle.
Wow.
But I may be wrong about that. It may have been slightly more than that. And I said, $75 a bottle? What are you, crazy? It's fermented grape juice. Why would anyone be stupid enough to pay, $75 a bottle for fermented grape juice? Needless to say, I'll take a quick look. But my guess is that 1990 Latache is what, $3,000, $5,000 a bottle? I've never had it. So, but everybody in the every wine collector has a story like that. This is not unusual. 1990 Latache would cost me. I can get a bottle somewhere. I can get a bottle in Italy for $5,600.
Nice.
That would have been a good investment.
No. Oh, there's lots of them. I can pick one up at Acker Merrill for $7,000.
There, you're perfect.
No, yeah, but let's talk about investing. I don't invest in wine.
Mm-hmm.
I know people who buy and sell wine for profit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I never have. I will occasionally sell wine, but only at what it cost me, even when it's worth more, because it kind of ruins it. I mean, if I buy a bottle of wine for let's say my most outrageous valued wine would be I don't know, what do you think, a McDonald Magnum? Probably. I can actually tell you in just a second.
Some of that Screaming Eagle, maybe.
I don't have any. Okay, here we go. Speaking of Chateau Rayas,
Oh yeah.
the most overvalued. It's not overvalued because it's. I have one bottle of 2001 Rayas Chateau Neuf du Pape. According to the database that I have, it is currently worth. I don't even like to use that word. It currently has a fair market value of $1,564. Cost me $300, $350. So I could make $1,200 if I sold it. Would I sell it? The answer is no. Now, that's a luxury. I admit it. It's a luxury. I can afford not to sell it. If I needed to sell it because I needed the money to eat, it'd be gone tomorrow. But I don't need to, and it's not going to change my life. I will admit though that if I had a bottle of Cinquenon Stars and Stripes and some idiot was willing to pay me $42,000 for it. Yeah, all right. I'll draw the line. Everybody's got their limit. I would not drink it because I've already had it and it doesn't taste like crap. It just tastes like rosé, which is not my favorite. But I'm looking.
So most of the tastings that you're going to, I know you're pretty actively involved around New York, different tasting groups and such. Probably pretty diverse in terms of the wines that come to the table, depending, on the theme of the night. Are you mainly bringing wines out of your collection? Are you buying wines to bring to some of these tastings? If they're specific to a certain theme. How are you operating out of your current collection, and what are those tastings like?
Mostly I bring stuff that I've collected because, but that's the advantage. I'm playing chess 50 moves in advance. I'm buying stuff from time to time with the expectation that, 2, 3 years from now, maybe this person that I know who really likes this kind of wine is going to organize a tasting and I'm going to be able to bring this bottle. But sometimes I've got to source a bottle, which I did a couple of months ago. A friend of mine, a good friend of mine, who really likes sherry, was having a wine dinner at which sherry was the theme, and everybody, I guess, had to bring sherry, and I didn't have any. Nobody in my family likes that kind of stuff. I had only had one bottle, and it was really special, and I had opened it with my family. So I poked around, and I found a bottle of sherry that I thought I would like and that other people would like. And I asked him whether it was supposed to be any good, and he said yes. And I brought it, and everybody liked it. And it turned out to be a bigger bottle than I thought it was, which was because the wine shop made a mistake. And I ended up bringing it to two wine dinners and an event. So occasionally you got to source if you want to try stuff, but I try to I try to bring things that I already have. If I source one bottle a year, it would be unusual.
Yeah.
What was the most interesting sherry at that tasting? I wanted to, like, I'm a sherry fan, so I was wondering what dinners look like with all sherry.
It's dependent upon what you liked. I brought a PX. It's a sherry that looks like slightly brown motor oil.
Yep.
And it's extremely sweet, figs, nuts, and I thought it was great. A lot of other people thought it was great. Sherry is so different one to the other because of styles and dryness. It's kind of my weak point, so I don't remember the name of the one that I like the best. I'd have to look at the photograph of the wines. But there's some very nice ones. Now, none of them were as good as the Coronation bottle that I opened and that we finally finished after a year and a half last month. A bottle, it's rarer and rarer that this happens, but every once in a while a bottle will come up at auction and nobody will know what it is, and it'll be kind of weird. Nobody else will bid on it. You do some quick research and you grab it. How about the grapes were picked in the year? I tell the story this way, but then the grapes were picked in the year that Abraham Lincoln was assassinated.
Oh boy.
And the sherry was bottled in the year that King George V was coronated, which was 1911.
Wow.
And it was called the Coronation bottle. It shows up at auction. I always sort the auctions by oldest first. I'm giving away all of these tricks. Screw it. I'm not going to tell you how I found it. Because, by the way, there's a guy whose name I got to remember his name. I don't know who he is because he bids on a pseudonym. But if I ever find out who he is, he's dead. I think his name is something like Lafitte 75. If I find out who Lafitte 75 is, or more appropriately, if you find Lafitte 75 dead in a ditch, I'm a prime suspect. My wife has actually suggested that the problem is that he knows my screen name, which I use for a lot of things. That has to do with the fact I'm a New York Jets fan. And he just waits around until the last minute and he spikes everything I bid because he knows that I do the research and he's just a lazy little shit.
Yeah, you got. We'll share this podcast on the Wine Berserkers website. I'm sure
I don't
he'll come
know
out of the
whether
woodwork.
Oh no, on Wine Berserkers, I've already suggested a few times that if Lafitte 75 ever shows up, and by the way, I've had Lafitte 75. If Lafitte 75 actually admits who he is, he'd better go and hide in some country like Uganda or Kazakhstan because I have friends everywhere. But
you said your username is usually something around the Jets, and I actually had read the Wall Street Journal article they did on you a few years back on bringing California cult wines to the Jets games. Is that still a tradition?
Of course. It may be a little bit less this year because if we're actually winning, we might. We have had wine tailgates for I mean, I wouldn't say forever, but for 20 years. If anybody out there is familiar with and has watched one of the Wine Library TV episodes with Gary Vaynerchuk and thinks he's a little nutty, okay, let me tell you what he's like as a Jets fan. He makes his Wine Library TV episodes look like they are filmed in a nunnery. He came to my tailgates a couple times. We have them virtually every game. It's a family thing for me. My brother-in-law has had seasons tickets to the Jets for, I don't know, since they were at Shea. And we have been having tailgate. Gary was at our tailgates. It had to be over 15 years ago. We bring really good wines to tailgates. And they're not just California. The thing what started the whole Wall Street Journal article was a wine, what would you call him? A wine personality. I don't have a good name for what he is. He privately brokers cellars for people who need to know other people who want to buy his wines. He's a Jets fan, and he asked me if I ever had an extra ticket, and I used to call him all the time, and it just never worked out. Every time he lives in Westchester, every time I'd call him, he had some other commitment, and then finally was able to come, and he brought not a California wine. He brought a Bonneau Reserve de Celestine, which is I think his name is Henri Bonneau's top of the line Chateauneuf du Pape. And then he wrote a tasting note about drinking it at a wine tailgate. And Letty Teague, who is the wine writer for the Wall Street Journal, read the tasting note and called me and said, do you really have these tailgates all the time? I said, yeah, sure. She says, can I come and write an article about one? I said, of course. So she came and I can't tell you actually, sure, what the hell? What can she do? Kill me? No, I offered her a glass of wine. And she was there and she was writing the article, and I had invited some extra family members. We had maybe 20 people. And I offered her a glass of wine and she said, no, I'm not allowed to drink any. Cause I'm working. I said, okay. And we were talking and she was talking to other people. And then we were talking again. And she says, is that over there the Myriad Elysian? I go, yeah. She goes, forget it. She took a, and she drank some. It's really good. But yeah, I guess if you are, I try not to take it overly seriously most of the time, except when it comes to really appreciating what's in the glass. And people always talk about, well, I only serve my best wines to people who can really appreciate them. And how's your censorship? Can I say bullshit? Seriously, and the answer is no. That's not. That's just not right. I serve. Will I serve certain wines to certain people that are very special wines? And the answer is yeah. But it's not because I know they're going to like it more. It's just that I know that they're going to have an extra level of appreciation for what it is historically. The 1865-1911 Coronation bottle is a great example. I'm trying to verify. It's made by a company called Gonzalez Bias, which has been making sherry, Pedro Jimenez Sher. That's the name of the grape. Sherry for 350 years. 1865, in addition to coincidentally, I believe, being the year in which Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, was also the year in which Queen Victoria's grandson was born. And I suspect that what happened was that the people at Gonzalez Bias, knowing he was second in line to the throne, he had an older brother who either never became king, got sick or something. I don't remember the story. I read it. They said, hey, this is a brilliant idea. We're going to put up a couple of bottles of special single vintage sherry. We're going to age it. And if he becomes king, we will bottle the sherry for his coronation. And they did. And so it's known as the 1911 coronation bottle, but the grapes were really, if it were done as a simple vintage, it would be an 1865 sherry. And it showed up at auction. I checked the tasting notes, found one tasting note written in the entire world on this wine, which, lo and behold, was written by a lawyer who was a wine collector from California, from Los Angeles, that I knew. I had never personally met him, but I knew him from conversation. So, and I read the tasting note and I said, I got to own this. I said, this is incredible. So without saying anything to anybody, I lowball bid on it. I don't know what I would have done if I got into a bidding war. Generally, I don't get into bidding wars if people really want to. I bid the lowest possible bid. Nobody else bid on it. I owned it. I went and I picked it up and I looked at it. I've got the bottle downstairs. There's certain bottles you don't ever going to throw out. The label is a complete crap. The only way I know what it actually says completely is that I called the guy and I said, was it really that good? I read your tasting note. He goes, yeah, why are you asking? I said, because I just bought a bottle of it at auction. He goes, I can't remember the exact order of the obscenities, but he did at some point say to me, how much did you pay? And I told him, I don't remember exactly, but it was like $225. He exploded. He started screaming. He was, fuck you, and all that. He says, I would have paid over $1,000 for that bottle. His tasting note says that when he drank it, he cried. It was so good.
Wow.
And it says little things like, yes, it proves that a wine can justify being rated 100 points. And let me tell you something. He was right. I opened it for Thanksgiving 2021, and my nephews had the bad taste to go to his sister. He's my nephew-in-law, whatever. He's my niece's husband. He had the bad taste to. He was, by the way, he was at the Cinequan on dinner. He was sitting next to you, as a matter of fact.
Oh,
That
that's
was
right.
Adam.
Yep.
Right.
Adam. Yep.
He had the bad taste to go to his sister's house for Thanksgiving when we originally served that wine. And I promised him that I would let him taste. There was a couple ounces left at the bottom. I promised him that I would let him taste it. And then I kept forgetting to bring it to events where he was, legitimately forgetting. And I finally remembered at the 2023 Westchester Wine Collectors Dinner. And there was just enough. I gave him a glass. I gave his wife, my niece, a glass. I gave a friend of ours who was sort of like, helped me put the table together, an ounce. And I gave Kevin Zarelli, he of the
Windows on the World or
Windows
the
on the
Wine
World wine course, a glass. Mm-hmm. And all I can say is it was transcendently incredible. It was the purity of it, when it poured, it was like glowing gold color. It was better a year and a half after I originally opened it than when I originally opened it. When I poured my niece a little bit, it like exploded. The entire table smelled like it. And she got upset because she wanted to buy potpourri that smelled like that, so her whole house could smell like that.
Yeah, I looked on Cellar Tracker, and the first note mentions this is a sample from J Hack.
Yeah, well, what happened was, that was the guy who the guy who organized the sherry dinner. He didn't introduce me to sherry, but most of the really good sherry was at dinners that I had with him. And we opened the bottle, we drank it for Thanksgiving, and there was, you can't drink a lot of sherry, even when it's that good. There were probably 8 ounces left in the bottle. So I got these tiny little bottles. I filled one up with it and went down to his house. Actually, after a football game, we drove down he lives in Jersey City. I think it's Jersey City, someplace over there in that foreign country they call New Jersey. And I gave him a tasting bottle. Then I filled another one and I sent it to the lawyer in Los Angeles who had written a tasting note without whom I would not have bought it. And, because sharing it's just what you want to do. Wine collecting at its essence is fundamentally different than stamp collecting or coin collecting. If you collect coins, you're not going to spend them. If you collect stamps, although these days they're not worth anything, but if you collect stamps and you have like world famous stamps, you're not going to put it on a letter. But for me, and it's not true for the investor, for me, if I'm collecting if I have a world class wine, 1865 sherry, 1875 Madeira, 1922 Madeira. I have 2 bottles. This is my mother's birth year wine. We opened one when she was 85 and one when she was 90. The object of the collection is to destroy it. Yeah. You want to drink it. You want it to be gone. That's the way you enjoy it. Some people enjoy it going downstairs to the wine cellar and sitting there and looking at bottles. And I fully admit that, particularly on a really hot day, going downstairs to the wine cellar has some advantages.
Yeah.
But The bottom line is no, you want to destroy it. We're going tomorrow is my wife's birthday. We are going to go to we're going to go to a jazz concert at Lyndhurst Castle in Westchester County, and we're going to have a birthday party, and my family and 2 friends of ours are going to come, and we'll bring whatever wine she wants, but we'll bring world-class wines, and we'll drink it, and we'll be happy, and we'll share it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think that's we've had one other collector on, and I think we had a similar kind of conversation. I think y'all are in 2 different maybe stages of your wine buying or like wine collecting journey. How you've made mention a few times to having one of the larger collections in the U.S. Can you give us some numbers here before we wrap up? How big is your
Me?
current
Did
collection?
I? No, if I said that, I made a mistake. There's no way
It was
No,
of that specific.
I have.
I love the specific wine. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. I have the largest
okay.
collection in the United States of Wendouree, and we argue whether I
Saxon.
have the largest collection of Saxum east of
Yeah.
the Mississippi, but probably not.
How many bottles of
the
Saxon do you have?
200.
Yeah, that's a lot.
If you really want it, well, I fully admit that I got lazy during COVID, and we according to my records, I have 239 bottles of Saxum, but I really don't because I've gotten a bunch of shipments in the last couple of years that I haven't entered, but I've drunk some of these. I've been negligent. One of these days when I have some free time, he says with a laugh. No, the answer is I have, according to my database, I have, let's see, I don't know, about 2,500 bottles. I have enough wine that if I buy no more wine for the entire remainder of my life, I will still, this says I have 2,000 bottles. Let's say it's probably, I probably still own 1,850 of those, but I probably got another 400 that I haven't entered because I've been sloppy the last couple of years.
So one more. We are going to have to wrap here in a sec, but one
Sure.
question. If Aaron Rodgers does bring a Super Bowl to the Jets in the next year or 2, what will you drink to celebrate?
A question we have been debating. I honestly, I don't know because the real question is, do I go to the game?
Oh.
You don't know my grandson. My grandson is 8. My grandson goes to Jets games with me. We're going to tie this into wine. Okay. So the Jets are playing the Buffalo Bills last year, and I have 2 extra tickets to the Bills game. So I offer them to Joe Cherwinski. Joe is the editor-in-chief of the Wine Advocate magazine, and he happens to live in Orange County, New York. If you think that's a disconnect, you should see Joe. He plays like serious amateur hockey. He does not wear an ascot. And my grandson was sitting next to Joe, and I realized it was going to be a photo op. And I have a picture of when the Jets kicked the field goal to win the game. No, to tie the game. Joe is standing there, and my grandson is next to him, but behind him, and he's just going like this. He's trying to hold it in because he doesn't want to embarrass him. When the Jets went ahead, he couldn't hold it in. He went batshit. I've never seen such an adrenaline rush. So he wants to go to the Super Bowl. He says, Grandpa, if the Jets are in the Super Bowl, are we going to go? And I have to go. But what
Tell,
will
tell,
I drink?
tell your grandson from a Ravens fan he won't have to worry about that.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that particular problem. I don't know. I'm trying to see. The problem is that the wines that I would really. Oh, there we go. How about 1997 Jaboulet Hermitage La Chapelle Double Magnum?
Ooh,
Nice.
that sounds amazing.
Or I do have I say what I would really like to open is one of my McDonald Magnums, but they're too young. I might open the answer is it doesn't really matter, because I'll be hoarse and then I probably won't be able to appreciate drinking it. I mean, I have some assorted special bottles that I wouldn't bring those, if I do not go to the game and watch it at home. I will drink, 2001 Rias, 1998 Soldera, probably 2015 McDonald, my last bottle of 2007 Scarecrow. There's some interesting stuff here to drink.
All right. Well, as another AFC team fan, I'm actually going to be rooting for the Jets just so we can have you back on and hear about it.
Wait a minute. What? You're not a Patriots fan, are you?
No, I was raised a Steelers fan. So.
Oh, I was at the game where they doinked 2 field goals.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I was sitting behind the goalposts watching them doink the 2 field goals.
Nice.
And the reason he missed was it was my fault.
Well, we'll record the next podcast of the AFC Championship game against the Jets and the Ravens.
The Ravens? Do you have any defensive player? Aren't you the team with the guy with the white suit that got disappeared because there was blood on it?
Oh no.
Oh, if you want to play hardball.
We'll do this all fair, Jay.
Okay. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
All right. That was our interview with Jay Hack. I hope everybody enjoyed his passion and his enthusiasm for wine as much as I did, and all of his stories. Man, those were a trip, I would say, for sure. He's certainly a larger-than-life figure in the wine world, and I could definitely listen to him all day. But that is it for this episode of the Vent Podcast. I hope everybody enjoyed the episode, and we will be back with a new interview and a new episode next week. Cheers.
To check out our current offerings and to sign up for the Vint platform, find us at www.vint.co. That's www.vint.co. For questions, comments, or feedback on the Vint podcast, please email us at support@vint.co. Vint and VV Markets are offering securities pursuant to Regulation A. Our offering circular as amended can be found on the SEC website. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Investments such as those on the Vint platform are speculative and involve substantial risks to consider before investing. We may provide communication that may contain certain forward-looking statements that are subject to various risks and uncertainties. Information provided in any communications, including this podcast, is not legal, business, or tax advice. All prospective investors should consult a legal, tax, or business advisor concerning the subject matter of any communications and any offering.